Alex, there's something about a perfectly straight board that just feels like an unfinished sentence. It's sitting there, all square and polite, but it's just begging for a bit of a detour.
Is that why half the things in your scrap bin look like discarded boomerangs? Honestly, Tiger, I've seen you spend 4 hours trying to make a piece of hickory do a U-turn just to avoid using a bandsaw.
Efficiency is a secondary concern when you're trying to coax the soul out of a tree. But really, today we're talking about the two big ways to get from point A to point B without a straight line: steam bending and bent lamination. They're the two paths to the same mountaintop, but one involves a lot more sweat and the other involves a lot more glue.
And knowing you, one of them involves a high-pressure steam vessel that looks suspiciously like a pipe bomb in your driveway.
It's a specialized atmospheric chamber, Alex, or as the neighbors call it, that PVC pipe that's currently screaming.
Okay, let's start with the screaming pipe. Steam bending. Every time I watch a video of it, it looks like magic until the wood just snaps, like a dry twig. What's the secret to making wood act like wet noodles?
It's all about the lignin. Think of wood like a bunch of long drinking straws held together by a very stubborn, very brittle glue. That's the lignin. When you pump 212-degree steam into that box, you're basically melting that glue. You aren't really softening the wood fibers themselves. You're making it so they can slide past each other without shattering.
Right, but I've tried this. I put a piece of kiln-dried red oak in a baggie with some boiling water once, don't ask, and it just splintered the second I put pressure on it.
Well, there's your first hurdle. Kiln-dried wood and steam are about as compatible as a cat and a vacuum cleaner. See, when wood goes through a commercial kiln, they're essentially setting that lignin permanently. It's like trying to remelt a piece of plastic that's been charred.
So you're saying I need fresh wood, like go out and chop a tree down?
Ideally, you want air-dried lumber, something with a moisture content around 15 to 20%. It's still got some of that natural flexibility. I remember trying to bend some kiln-dried walnut for a chair back years ago. I figured if I just steamed it longer, it would eventually give in. I left it in there for 3 hours. When I took it out and hit it with the clamp, it didn't bend. It exploded. Sounded like a 22 caliber rifle going off in my face. I had walnut shrapnel in my beard for a week.
Well, at least your beard looked distinguished. So air-dried wood is the gold standard. What else? Because I see people using these metal straps. Is that just to keep the wood from flying away?
Those compression straps are the difference between a success and a very expensive piece of firewood. When you bend wood, the outside of the curve wants to stretch and the inside wants to compress. Wood is actually pretty decent at compressing, but it's terrible at stretching. It has zero give on the tension side.
So the strap stops the outside from stretching?
Exactly, it traps the wood between two steel blocks. When you pull that curve, you're forcing all those wood fibers to compress on the inside. You're essentially squeezing the straws together rather than tearing them apart. If you don't use a strap for a tight radius, the grain on the back will just lift up like a hangnail from hell.
Okay, but what if I don't want to build a steam box or go hunting for air-dried lumber? That's where bent lamination comes in, right? It feels much more controlled.
Bent lamination is for the people who like to sleep at night. It's predictable. You're taking a thick board and slicing it into thin veneers, usually around an eighth or 3/16 of an inch. At that thickness, even the most stubborn white oak will flex like a fly rod.
But then you have to glue it all back together. That sounds like a mess waiting to happen. I can just picture myself covered in resin, permanently attached to a plywood form.
It's not a matter of if, Alex. It's when. I once glued my favorite flannel shirt to a curved table leg. I had to choose between cutting the shirt or ruin the glue up. I walked around the shop shirtless for the rest of the day.
I'm choosing to delete that mental image, but seriously, the glue choice matters here, doesn't it? You can't just use standard yellow wood glue for everything.
You hit the nail on the head. Standard PVA glue, that yellow stuff we all use, has a bit of creep to it. It stays slightly flexible even when dry. If you use that for a heavy lamination, over time, the wood's internal tension will actually pull the layers apart or cause the whole piece to spring back and lose its shape. You want something that dries hard and brittle. A plastic resin glue or a slow-set epoxy is the way to go. You want that glue line to be as stiff as a frozen board.
Let's talk about that spring back. That's the bogeyman of curved work, isn't it? You spend all this time making a form, you clamp it down, and then you release it, and the wood just opens up like a blooming flower.
It's the ghost in the machine. Every piece of wood wants to be a tree again, and trees are straight. In bent lamination, the thinner your strips, the less spring back you'll get. If you use 4 thick strips, it'll bounce back a lot. If you use 12 thin strips, it'll stay right where you put it.
And what about steam bending? Surely that doesn't spring back as much since you melted the lignin.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But steam bent wood is a fickle mistress. You have to overbend it. If I want a 90-degree curve, I might bend it to 95 or 100 degrees on the form. And then you have to leave it there. Not for an hour, not for 2 hours. You leave it until it is bone dry. If you take it off while there's still moisture in those fibers, it'll relax faster than a politician after an election.
So which one wins? If you're making, say, a rocking chair runner, which path are you taking?
Depends on the look. A steam bent piece is one solid hunk of wood. The grain is continuous, it looks natural, it feels honest, but it's risky. One hidden knot or a bit of cross grain and snap. Bent lamination is stronger, and you can make curves that are physically impossible with steam, but you'll see those tiny glue lines on the edges.
I noticed you have some cork on your forms over there. Is that for the wood's comfort?
I'm not running a spa, Alex. That cork, or sometimes a bit of heavy rubber, is there to distribute the pressure. When you're cranking down those clamps, it's very easy to leave bruises in the hot, soft wood. The cork acts like a cushion so the clamps don't dent the surface you just spent 3 hours sanding.
That looks like it was cut into shape, though. Isn't that easier? Just getting a big block and carving it out?
Sure, it's easier, until it breaks. See, when you cut a curve out of a straight board, you end up with short grain. The grain runs out the side of the curve. It's like a stack of crackers. If you apply pressure, it just shears off. A bent piece, whether steamed or laminated, has the grain running the full length of the curve. It's incredibly strong. You could probably drive a truck over a well-made bent lamination and it wouldn't flinch.
Okay, let's talk shop disasters. You mentioned the walnut shrapnel, but give me something where you thought you had it right and it all went sideways.
Oh, I've got a library of those. I was building a set of curved slats for a garden bench. I had my steam box going, I had my forms ready, and I was using white oak, the king of bending woods. I got the first 3 pieces in perfectly. Then, on the 4th one, I got cocky. I didn't wait the full hour of steaming. I thought, it feels hot enough.
Oh no.
I pulled it out, threw it on the form, and gave the winch a hearty crank. The piece didn't just break, it delaminated internally. It looked like a deck of cards being shuffled. But the real kicker was the steam box. I had noticed that the water level in my pot had run dry. The bottom of my cedar box started to char and catch fire. I was so focused on the wood on the form that I didn't notice the billowing black smoke behind me until the neighbor started pointing.
So you were essentially trying to bend wood in a giant horizontal chimney?
Exactly. I ended up with a half-burnt box, a shattered piece of oak, and a very bruised ego. It's a delicate dance, Alex. You have to respect the clock. 1 minute per inch of thickness, that's a myth. It's more like a best guess. I usually go an hour per inch, plus a forgiveness factor of 20 minutes.
That's a lot of sitting around. What do you do while it's steaming?
Clean the shop. Or more accurately, I stare at the clock and second guess every decision I've made up to that point.
You know, for all the frustration, the finished product is pretty stunning. There's a flow to bent work that you just can't get with joinery. It looks like the wood just decided to grow that way.
That's the magic of it. You're taking a rigid, stubborn material and reminding it that it used to be a living, swaying thing. There's a real satisfaction in feeling that moment when the wood gives up. You're pulling on that strap, feeling all that resistance, and then suddenly it just softens. It flows. It's like the wood is finally agreeing to your plan.
You make it sound like a hostage negotiation. Just cooperate, White Oak, and nobody gets hurt.
It basically is. But when you take it off the form the next morning and it holds that shape, that's the payoff. You've changed the geometry of nature.
So if I'm a listener sitting in my garage right now, wanting to try this for the first time, what's the gateway drug?
Start with bent lamination. Grab some scraps, rip them thin on the bandsaw, and make a curved coat hook or a small box lid. It'll teach you about spring back and clamp pressure without the risk of third-degree burns. Once you've mastered the glue, then you can build the screaming pipe and join the ranks of us steam junkies.
Just remember to check the water level in the pot, folks.
Please, for the sake of your neighbors and your eyebrows.
Well, I think I'm ready to go ruin some wood. Thanks for the breakdown, Tiger.
Anytime. Just remember, if it doesn't bend, you probably just aren't being patient enough. Or you're trying to bend a 2x4. Don't do that.
Noted. See you next time in the den.
Keep your tools sharp and your curves intentional.